The seeker's trembling hands held the old letter, its yellowed paper crinkling as they slowly unfolded it. The words, written in a familiar handwriting, sent shockwaves through their chest. "I've never forgotten you, not once," the letter began, as if speaking from the depths of a past long buried. For years, the seeker believed their father had abandoned them. Not a single word, not a single sign of his existence since that fateful day. The years of yearning, the sleepless nights wondering why he had left, now seemed like a cruel illusion. This letter, this fragile piece of the past, shattered the walls of certainty they had spent years building. "You were never abandoned," the letter continued. "I had no choice but to let you go. I am not proud of it, but I made the decision for you, not against you." The seeker's eyes blurred with tears as they read further, each word unraveling a painful knot in their heart. There, buried beneath the regret, lay a truth they were not prepared to face. Their father had never truly left them. The letter fell from their hands, the weight of it sinking deep into their soul. The room felt suffocating. The seeker stood by the window, staring into the vast emptiness beyond. The letter, now crumpled in their hand, weighed heavier than ever. Their father's words echoed in their mind, clashing with the bitterness that had built up over the years. "I've never forgotten you." They had lived their life convinced of abandonment, their father's silence a haunting presence that lingered in every corner of their existence. Now, this letter was a cruel reminder that their memories were built on a lie, on a false narrative they had clung to. "I made the decision for you." It was as if their father's voice had been lost in time, reaching out through the ages to say he had acted out of love. But how could they believe that? Years of resentment, anger, and the bitter taste of loneliness had erased any sense of forgiveness. The seeker closed their eyes tightly, trying to suppress the tears. The letter was still clutched in their hands, its truth now too much to bear. This was not the answer they were expecting. This was not the redemption they had longed for. The seeker collapsed onto the chair, the weight of the letter pressing down on their chest, suffocating them. For so long, they had believed the worst, that their father had abandoned them without reason. Years of wondering why he never came back, why he never reached out, had left them hollow inside. Yet, here was this letter, unraveling everything they thought they knew. The words seemed like a cruel joke, an attempt to rewrite history, but something deep inside them stirred. A quiet whisper telling them to listen, to understand. "I made the decision for you," their father had written, and the words echoed with a strange, unfamiliar tenderness. It was not the cold, unfeeling dismissal they had always imagined. But how could they reconcile this new truth with the years of pain that had built up? They had grown up in the absence of love, in the silence of abandonment. Could they really believe that their father had done it out of love? The seeker ran their hand through their hair, the confusion and grief mixing with something else, a deep, raw anger. How could he have made that decision for them? How could he have left them to feel this emptiness for so long? The seeker stood again, this time pacing the small room in agitation. The letter lay discarded on the floor, a symbol of the chaos now swirling inside them. The weight of the truth was unbearable, and the more they tried to make sense of it, the more it felt like the ground beneath them was shifting. "Why?" they whispered to themselves, the question hanging in the air like a taunting riddle. How could they accept this new version of the past? How could they move forward, knowing that their entire childhood had been a lie? The seeker's eyes drifted to the window, the fading daylight outside offering no comfort. It was as though the world beyond the glass mirrored the storm inside. A decision that had been made for them, a choice made out of love. It didn't seem real. It couldn't be real. The anger bubbled up again, stronger this time, pushing away the initial confusion and leaving only bitter resentment. They were a child of abandonment, a victim of neglect, or so they had believed. But now, everything was in question, and the truth felt like a slap in the face. There was no way to go back. The past couldn't be rewritten, no matter how hard they tried to understand it. The seeker stopped abruptly and looked at the letter again, lying still on the floor, as if it were a piece of their broken past. The emotions that had been swirling inside them suddenly came to a head, and a sharp, painful realization dawned. They had been holding on to their anger for so long, but it no longer served them. It didn't change the fact that they had spent years believing their father had abandoned them, nor did it erase the emptiness they felt. But could they continue to live in the shadow of resentment? Could they keep punishing themselves with a truth that wasn't entirely theirs to claim? With trembling hands, the seeker picked up the letter again, their grip tighter this time, as if trying to hold on to something that could anchor them to reality. The words still stung, but they also opened a door that had been locked for so many years. "I made the decision for you," their father had written. For the first time, the seeker wondered, was this the truth they needed to hear? Could they forgive him? Could they let go of the pain and the anger that had defined so much of their life? They didn't have the answers yet, but they felt something new stirring within them. A flicker of hope, a seed of understanding, even in the face of all the hurt. The seeker sat in silence, the letter still clutched in their hands, its weight now feeling almost unbearable. The room was eerily quiet, save for the sound of their own breathing, slow and ragged. Outside, the rain began to fall, the soft patter of droplets against the window pane only adding to the oppressive atmosphere. "I don't know if I can do this," the seeker murmured, their voice barely above a whisper. "How do you forgive someone who left you for so long, even if they had their reasons?" Their fingers traced the edges of the letter, feeling the creases as if they could somehow absorb the truth that it held. It was too much, the years of abandonment, the pain, the anger. But somewhere beneath it all, there was a small voice telling them that the journey wasn't about simply forgetting the past. It was about understanding it, about finding the courage to move past the hurt. Yet, the weight of their father's absence pressed down like a constant shadow. Could they truly face this truth, or would they forever be haunted by the ghost of what they never had? The seeker let out a heavy sigh, standing up slowly and walking over to the window, watching the rain blur the world outside. It was as if the storm mirrored the turmoil inside them, a chaos they had to confront if they ever hoped to find peace. The seeker stood motionless by the window, their mind a whirlwind of thoughts. The rain fell in heavy sheets, the storm outside mirroring the storm within. They had lived for years with the belief that they had been abandoned. But now, the truth was shifting their perception, and they weren't sure they could trust it. What if it's all just a lie? The words echoed in their mind, a question that seemed to have no answer. Their father's absence had left scars that had never fully healed, and now, the possibility that it had all been done out of love was too much to comprehend. The seeker's eyes blurred as they gazed out at the endless rain, their thoughts drifting back to childhood. The coldness of those years, the silence of their father's departure, and the emptiness that had come with it. How could that have been love? And yet, in the quiet of the night, as the rain continued to fall, the seeker could almost feel the weight of the letter in their hands, as if it held the answer they had been searching for. Was it possible to forgive someone who had hurt them so deeply? Could they even understand the reasons behind his actions? The seeker's heart pounded in their chest as they wrestled with the idea. The road ahead was unclear, but it was a road they would have to walk, whether they were ready or not. The soft sound of a knock on the door broke the seeker's reverie, and they turned sharply, their heart racing. Standing in the doorway was their sidekick, a figure of warmth and light in the midst of the seeker's turmoil. "You've been in here for hours," the sidekick said gently, concern etching their features. "You need to talk about it." The seeker looked away, their eyes unfocused, the letter still burning in their hands. "I don't know if I can," the seeker replied, their voice shaky. "I don't know how to move forward." The sidekick stepped into the room, taking a seat beside the seeker, offering a silent presence of support. "You're not alone in this," they said softly. "Whatever this is, you don't have to go through it by yourself." The seeker looked at them, their eyes filled with doubt. "But what if I can't forgive him? What if the truth is just too much to bear?" The sidekick smiled, their expression gentle yet firm. "Forgiveness is a choice, not a necessity. But you can't keep carrying the weight of all this alone. Let it out." The seeker nodded slowly, the weight in their chest slightly easing with the kindness of their friend. Perhaps this was the first step, to let someone in to share the burden and to face the truth, no matter how painful. The conversation with their sidekick lingered in the seeker's mind, long after they had left. Their words echoed like a gentle refrain, reminding the seeker that they were not alone in this. But still, the weight of the letter and the flood of emotions was overwhelming. The seeker wandered through the house, their mind drifting back to their childhood. The distant memories of days spent waiting, hoping, longing for a father who never returned. Thought of those years filled them with anger, but now, in the quiet of the night, they couldn't help but wonder. Could their father's silence truly have been an act of love? The seeker ran their hand over their face, frustration mounting. It didn't make sense. The words from the letter conflicted with everything they had believed for so long. How could they accept this? Could they accept it? The seeker stopped at the doorway, their hand resting against the frame. It was as if their whole life had been leading to this moment, a crossroads where the past and the present collided. They had to make a choice, to confront the truth and seek understanding, or to bury the past deeper and live in the shadow of resentment. The seeker returned to the desk, the letter still resting on the wood where they had left it. With a deep breath, they sat down, hands shaking as they picked it up once more. The paper was fragile, the ink faded, but the words it held were as sharp as ever. I made the decision for you. The seeker could feel the weight of those words, pressing down on them, suffocating them with their unspoken meaning. They ran a finger over the faded script, trying to absorb it all. How could they ever reconcile the years of pain with the possibility that their father had made the hardest choice of all for their benefit? The seeker closed their eyes, feeling the overwhelming surge of conflicting emotions. They were lost in a sea of anger, confusion, and sadness. But somewhere deep within, they knew the next step was to confront their father. They had to ask him, to hear his side of the story, even if it meant facing more hurt. I have to know, the seeker whispered, their voice barely audible. They had spent too many years in the dark. It was time to step into the light, no matter how painful it might be. The seekers stood at the edge of the cliff, the wind howling around them, whipping their hair back. The sky above was dark, storm clouds gathering, a reflection of the turmoil within them. I thought I knew who I was, they whispered, their voice barely audible against the roar of the wind. I thought the past defined me, that it was the only thing that shaped who I've become. They looked down at the jagged rocks below, the waves crashing violently against them, as if nature itself mirrored their internal conflict. But now, everything feels so uncertain. The seeker clenched their fists, the letter still tucked in their jacket pocket, its weight a constant reminder of the past. What if I've been wrong all along? What if the pain was a lie? The question lingered in the air, unanswered. The storm above seemed to answer, with a distant thunderclap, as if daring them to face the truth. The seeker's heart pounded, torn between the urge to confront their father and the fear of what that confrontation might bring. It was easier to run, to hide from the truth, but they knew they couldn't. The storm was rising inside them, and the only way out was through it. The seeker returned to their home, the weight of the storm still clinging to their body. They felt as though they had just fought a battle, won against themselves, and the victory felt hollow. The letter, now tucked safely in their hands, was a symbol of the past, but also a gateway to their future. They walked into the dimly lit living room, the smell of old wood and dust filling the air, a reminder of the years that had slipped away unnoticed. I don't know if I can do this, the seeker murmured to themselves, the letter now resting on the table in front of them. They had read it so many times, yet the words still felt foreign. How do you confront someone you've spent years resenting? How do you find peace in something that has caused so much pain? They felt the weight of their father's absence once again, but this time it was different. It wasn't just anger or betrayal, it was confusion and a desperate need for understanding. Maybe it's time to stop running, the seeker said quietly, taking a deep breath. They knew what they had to do, but the thought of it filled them with dread. The doorbell rang, interrupting the seeker's thoughts, and they hesitated before opening it. Standing on the doorstep was the mentor, a calm figure who seemed unaffected by the storm. "I knew you'd be here," the mentor said with a gentle smile. The seeker nodded, stepping aside to let them in, feeling an unspoken understanding between them. "You look like you've been through a storm," the mentor remarked, glancing at the rain-soaked seeker. The seeker let out a shaky laugh. "I think I have." The mentor's eyes softened, and they sat down across from the seeker, their presence calm and reassuring. "What's weighing on you?" the mentor asked, their voice steady and patient. The seeker hesitated, then reached for the letter, holding it out. "It's everything," they said quietly. "The truth, the past, the choices I've made, and the ones I'm about to make." The mentor studied the seeker's face, their expression unreadable. "The past has a way of defining us, but it doesn't have to. It's not the truth that haunts us, it's how we deal with it." The seeker absorbed the words, but they weren't sure if they were ready to accept them. The weight of the past was heavy, but the future seemed even more uncertain. The mentor's words stayed with the seeker as the night wore on, and they found themselves unable to sleep. The darkness outside seemed to press in on them, amplifying the stillness of the room. They had spent years running from their past, but now they had to face it. Why did he leave? The question echoed in their mind, but now it wasn't just about the anger anymore. The seeker's thoughts drifted to their father's decision, to the life they had lived without him. The mentor had said that the past didn't define them, but how could they let go of something that had shaped them so completely? They stood by the window, looking out at the empty streets, the quiet night stretching out before them. "I don't know if I can do this alone," the seeker whispered. The weight of the choice before them was overwhelming. The future wasn't a simple path. It was a maze of questions, and with each step, they had to navigate through the maze of their emotions. The seeker let out a deep sigh, their breath fogging up the window as they pressed their palm against it. They had to face their past, and they had to confront the pain it caused. But could they find peace on the other side? The seeker stood at the door, their hand hovering over the handle. The decision had been made. They were going to confront their father, no matter what the outcome. The letter still rested in their pocket, but it felt lighter now. It was no longer the anchor that held them back, but a reminder of the past they had to face. "I've spent too long avoiding the truth," the seeker said quietly to themselves, taking a deep breath. "It's time to stop hiding." They opened the door and stepped into the night, the cool air rushing in to meet them. The world felt different somehow, as if the weight of their decision had shifted the very air around them. "I don't know what I'll find," the seeker continued, their voice steady now. "But I have to know. I have to face this for me." The seeker stepped forward, the door closing softly behind them. The journey ahead was uncertain, but for the first time in a long time, they felt ready to walk it, whatever it might bring. The seeker arrived at their father's home, the old house looming before them. It had been years since they had last set foot here, and the memories of their childhood filled the air, thick with unspoken words. The door creaked open slowly as they raised their hand to knock. Every step felt heavier than the last, as if the past was clutching at their heels. Their father, the man who had disappeared without a trace, was just behind this door. "I don't know what to expect," the seeker muttered under their breath, their nerves threatening to overwhelm them. The letter in their pocket felt like it was burning through the fabric, reminding them of the reasons they had come. "What if he doesn't want to see me?" The thought hit them like a punch in the gut. They had spent years building a story in their head, a narrative that painted their father as a villain. Now that story was crumbling, and the truth felt like something too fragile to touch. The seeker reached for the doorbell, their hand trembling, and the sound of the chime was like a signal. There was no turning back now. They had come to face the man who had shaped their life, for better or worse. The door opened slowly, and there he was, the father they had spent years resenting. His appearance was older than they remembered, his face lined with time and regret. "You came," he said, his voice rough, as if unused to speaking after so long. The seeker stood frozen, their heart racing as they faced the man who had once been their hero, then their ghost. "I wasn't sure if you would," the father continued, stepping aside to let them in. The seeker hesitated for a moment, their gaze drifting to the familiar surroundings. The walls of the house seemed to whisper forgotten memories, a painful reminder of all that had been lost. The air felt heavy with the weight of years apart, and the silence between them felt like a chasm too wide to bridge. "I've been waiting for this," the father said quietly, as if trying to convey everything with just those few words. The seeker finally stepped inside, their mind spinning with 1,000 questions. "Why didn't you come back?" they asked, their voice shaky but demanding. The question hung in the air, waiting for an answer that could change everything. The father led the seeker into the living room, his footsteps slow and heavy. The house smelled of dust and old wood, as though it had been untouched for years. The seeker sat down on the couch, their hands gripping the edge of the seat, unsure of where to start. "I'm sorry," the father said after a long pause, his voice filled with regret. "I know I can never make up for the years I've lost, for the hurt I caused." The seeker looked at him, their eyes searching for the truth in his words. "I made a decision a long time ago, one I thought was the right choice. I was wrong. I know that now." The seeker felt a knot tighten in their chest as the weight of those words sank in. Their father wasn't the villain they had imagined, but the truth was still painful. "Why didn't you tell me? Why didn't you come back?" The question was raw, the years of abandonment crashing down in a single moment. The father's eyes filled with tears as he looked away, unable to meet the seeker's gaze. "I was trying to protect you," he whispered, his voice breaking. "But I see now that I only hurt you more." The seeker stood up abruptly, unable to sit still any longer. Their emotions were a whirlwind, crashing between anger and the strange pull of understanding. "Protect me? You left me. You abandoned me," they shouted, their voice trembling with the force of the years of hurt. The father's face softened, his hands raised in a gesture of apology. "I didn't want to leave you," he said quietly. "But I had to. I thought it was the only way to keep you safe." The seeker's mind raced, trying to make sense of the words, but the pain was too much. "Safe from what?" they demanded. "Safe from me?" The father stood slowly, moving towards the seeker with a hesitant step. "No," he said gently, his voice filled with sorrow. "I was trying to protect you from a world that I couldn't shield you from. I thought I was saving you, but I was only hurting you in the end." The seeker's anger began to dissolve, replaced by a deep sadness they hadn't expected. "I don't know if I can forgive you," they whispered, their voice soft and broken. "But I need to understand." The father's eyes welled with tears, and he nodded, as if accepting the weight of the seeker's pain. "I understand. I'll do whatever it takes." The silence stretched on, heavy and suffocating, as the seeker stood there, contemplating the weight of the conversation. "I don't know if I can ever forgive you," they said finally, their voice barely a whisper. "But I need to try." The father nodded silently, tears streaming down his face as he took a step back. The seeker took a deep breath, trying to steady their racing heart. "I don't know if this changes everything," they continued, their voice cracking. "But it's a start." The father's gaze softened, and he stepped closer, as if trying to close the gap between them. "I'll do whatever it takes to make it right," he said, his voice filled with determination. The seeker looked up at him, searching for any sign of truth in his words. They didn't know if forgiveness was possible, but in that moment, they knew they had to try. "We have to start somewhere," the seeker replied, their voice quieter now, tinged with uncertainty. "And maybe, just maybe, that's enough." The seeker stood on the doorstep, the weight of their decision pressing down on them. They had come so far, and yet the path ahead seemed unclear. "I don't know if I can move on," they whispered. "The past still holds me." They turned, eyes meeting their father's with an unspoken understanding. "But I can't keep living in its shadow." The father stepped forward, his voice steady. "The past doesn't define you, unless you let it." The seeker inhaled deeply, feeling the storm within begin to calm. "Maybe you're right," they said, voice cracking. "Maybe it's time to choose something different." A soft wind blew, carrying away the last remnants of doubt. The future was uncertain, but the first step had been taken. "I'll try," the seeker muttered. "I'll try to forgive, to let go." The seeker and their father sat in the living room, the silence between them a far cry from the tension that had once filled the air. "I'm not sure I'll ever fully understand," the seeker confessed, looking down at their hands. "But I think I'm ready to stop blaming you." The father nodded, his eyes filled with an unspoken gratitude. "I don't expect forgiveness overnight, but I'm here, and I'll always be here, no matter what." The seeker glanced up, a hesitant smile forming. "I don't have all the answers, but I think I'm ready to find them, not in the past, but in the future." The weight in the room had shifted, lightness beginning to fill the space where once there was only darkness. As the conversation continued, the seeker felt something new stirring within them. A quiet understanding. "You weren't the only one who made mistakes," they said softly. "I built walls too." The father nodded, his face heavy with regret. "We both did." The seeker stood up, feeling a new sense of clarity. "Maybe we can't erase the past," they said, looking toward the window, "but we can start rebuilding from here. Together." The father's face softened, a quiet pride shining through the layers of pain. "I'd like that," he said, his voice thick with emotion. The seeker smiled, the first genuine smile in years. Later, as the evening drew on, the seeker found themselves lost in thought. "I still don't know what's next," they murmured. "But I know this. I don't have to walk this path alone anymore." The father placed a hand on their shoulder, a gesture of support. "You never did. You just needed to see it." The seeker turned to face him, their eyes clear for the first time. "I think I finally understand," they said, their voice steady. "Forgiveness isn't just for you. It's for me too." The father's eyes glistened as he nodded. "And that's the greatest gift you can give yourself." As the night drew to a close, the seeker felt a strange peace settle over them. "Tomorrow will come," they said softly, "and I don't know what it holds, but I'll face it. I'm ready now." The father smiled, his face relaxed. "I'm proud of you," he said quietly. The seeker smiled back, the weight of the past finally lifting. "I'm proud of me too," they whispered. They had found a new strength, not in the absence of pain, but in the willingness to embrace it and move forward. The future no longer seemed so daunting. With their father by their side, the seeker felt ready to step into it. The seeker stood by the window, the morning light gently spilling into the room. The weight of the past had shifted, no longer a burden, but a part of who they were. "I've spent so many years lost in the past," they said, their voice steady. "But now I feel like I'm finally free to live." Their gaze softened as they looked out at the world. The future no longer felt like an overwhelming force, but something within their reach. "I can't change what's happened, but I can choose how I move forward." The air felt different now, lighter, as if they had finally embraced the space between the past and the future. "I'm not the same person I was before, and that's okay." The seeker turned away from the window, feeling a sense of calm they hadn't known in years. The journey was far from over, but for the first time they felt ready to walk it. Later that day, the seeker found themselves walking through the park, the familiar sights of their childhood now feeling like distant memories. "I used to avoid this place," they said to themselves, glancing around at the old oak trees. "But today, it feels different." The park was alive with the sounds of birds and distant laughter, and yet, the seeker felt an odd sense of peace. "I've been so focused on what I didn't have," they continued. "But now, I see everything I do have." Their steps slowed, and they took a deep breath, the cool air filling their lungs. "The past has shaped me, but it doesn't have to control me anymore." They smiled softly, the weight of old regrets lifting as they walked forward with newfound strength. "I'm learning to embrace the present, and that's enough for now." That evening, the seeker sat across from their father, a quiet meal between them. The conversation flowed easily, no longer filled with unspoken tension. "It feels strange, doesn't it?" the seeker said, a soft laugh escaping their lips. "For so long, I didn't know if this was possible." The father smiled, his eyes reflecting the years of regret and the relief that came with reconciliation. "It's not perfect, but it's real," he replied. "And that's what matters now." The seeker nodded, the warmth of the moment sinking in. I don't have all the answers, they said, their voice steady. But I'm learning to let go of the things I can't change. The father reached out, placing a hand on their own, the gesture simple yet filled with meaning. That's all anyone can do. The seeker's smile deepened as they sat in the shared quiet, knowing that this was the beginning of something new. The days passed, and the seeker felt a sense of renewal with each one. I'm learning that peace doesn't come from the absence of pain, they reflected as they sat by the window one evening. It comes from accepting it and choosing to move forward. The room was quiet, the only sound, the gentle hum of the night outside. There's still so much to figure out, they admitted. But for the first time I feel like I'm walking the right path. The seeker closed their eyes for a moment, feeling the weight of everything they had gone through. The past doesn't have to haunt me. It's just part of my story. They opened their eyes, a new clarity in their gaze. And I'm ready to write the next chapter. As the seeker walked through the city streets the next morning, they felt the world around them with new eyes. I used to feel so small in this world, they said quietly, a smile tugging at their lips. But now, everything feels full of possibility. The city buzzed with life, but the seeker's pace was steady, no longer hurried or weighed down. I'm no longer defined by what's happened, they continued. I'm choosing to create something new. The air was crisp, and the seeker took in a deep breath, the city feeling alive with energy. I don't know what's ahead, but for the first time in years I'm excited to find out. They looked up, the sun shining down brightly, their heart light as they walked toward the future with purpose. The seeker stands on a hill, looking out over the city. I finally feel like I'm standing in my own story, they say. I can't change the past, but I can move forward. With the wind brushing through their hair, they embrace the future with openness. Walking through the city, the seeker reflects. I'm part of something bigger now. Everyone has their own story. They feel connected to the world and walk with confidence, no longer burdened by the past. Sitting in a cafe, the seeker smiles. Peace isn't from perfection, it's made, day by day. They sip their coffee, content, understanding that the past no longer dictates their future. Walking through a park, the seeker says, I'm ready for change. Growth is worth it. They stop to take in the serene surroundings, feeling a deep sense of peace and readiness for the future. Standing on a bridge, the seeker looks at the river. I'm ready to begin again, they say, smiling gently at the future. The sun sets, symbolizing a new chapter in their journey.